Our East Coast trip had been pretty amazing. Everything had just fallen into place perfectly. And this was going to be our last full day of riding. And it was a ride I was really excited for. We were going to be hitting the old Croton Aqueduct Trail. When I woke up in the morning, Dylan had already taken off to meet a friend for breakfast, so I headed in that direction towards Brooklyn. I stopped at a coffee shop that I wanted to check out. We met up there, and then we took off for the day together. We needed to work our way over into Manhattan, and then we were going to be riding up to about 165th Street where High Bridge Park is. This is a section of the trail that I had never been on before. There's a historic bridge you'll see in a little bit that we'll talk about. But last time I rode the OCA, we were coming down from Croton into New York. And when we were in Yonkers, we got a little bit lost and ended up just on the regular bike path and going through the Bronx, which was a great ride too. But on this ride, I wanted to make sure I hit the parts that I missed the last time. A huge shout out to Pedal to Process from our Discord server. He made me a GPX file that I could use to navigate from High Bridge, over the High Bridge, through Yonkers in the direction that I wanted to go. It was really, really helpful. If you ever plan on trying to ride the OCA, you're going to need some kind of mapping. It is not something that you could just follow. There's not like clear signage everywhere. So it's something that you need to plan ahead for. So that was the Queensboro Bridge that we came over, and here you can see us coming through Central Park. It wasn't really intended, but actually the aqueduct kind of terminated here with a giant reservoir. If you know where the Great Lawn or Turtle Pond is in Central Park, that's where there was a giant reservoir. And then the water actually went onto a second reservoir, which is kind of where the library is now, and Bryant Park. And that was like a big Egyptian-style reservoir there. So those are all gone now, but here we are in High Bridge Park, so kind of starting the, there's even a sign for the OCA here, starting the actual journey. A lot of people consider, the OCA not really starting until you get way up to Van Cortlandt Park and Yonkers, but this is kind of the other stuff I wanted to see. The day after we did this ride, actually Terry B and his friends did the OCA, and if you watch their video, they were doing all kinds of cuts, which I believe are in that park there. So this is the High Bridge. This is what I missed last time. This carried the aqueduct over the Harlem River. So it was something I really wanted to see. It was originally like a Roman style bridge with like the arches that looked like a Roman aqueduct. But in 1927, they replaced it with this single steel arch. And the point of that was for shipping, so the boats could get through easier. This was a little mistake in our GPX file. We were actually salmoning there, going the wrong way. So I'll link my Strava like always, but I'll also link the corrected GPX file that Pedal to Process left for us. So if you do want to follow the route we did, that starts at that park there, you can. So a lot of these sections here are the ones that I missed on the way south when we did it a few years ago. So it's really cool to see these through here, totally different. Everything about the OCA, which is how I'll refer to it from now on, Old Croton Aqueduct Trail, is just so interesting because it just changes up so much. Basically, they had built this aqueduct from 1837 to 1842, and now the way everything's developed around it, but the right-of-way still exists, just makes it really, really cool because you just go through all kinds of stuff through the towns. Sometimes you feel like you're in people's backyards. Sometimes you're going through a city park. You'll see there's a part where we go right through a schoolyard. It's just there's not really anything else like it. So basically we're making our way to the new Croton Dam, which is the end of the trail. There was an old Croton Dam that is now buried behind the new one. And so the old one and the aqueduct associated with it, that operated all the way up until 1955. The new one still supplies 10% of New York City's water. So this is the day before Halloween, and you could see we're riding in shorts. Well, I'm riding in shorts in a t-shirt, which just is amazing. So as one thing was cool too about this trip versus the last time I did it, we started off on like a misty, rainy morning, so you couldn't see quite as many views. This day we had this absolutely stunning, perfect day. The fall colors are still out, but enough of the leaves are gone too that you're getting these great views. there's sections along here where you get these amazing views of the Hudson River Valley, and there's these sheer like rock cliffs on there. I think they have a name, but I'm not sure what they're called. Kind of stuff you won't really be able to tell with a GoPro, but absolutely just really, really beautiful. We made a couple mistakes through here. This is why I was saying I would share that other GPX file, because my Strava is a bit of a jumble. Like it's just such a strange trail, the way you cut through things, that even with a map, messed it up a couple times. I think that's one of the weaknesses of Wahoo's. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. When a trail crosses over itself with a bridge or anything like that, I've just found it to be a little confusing sometimes. And it's not the fault of the file at all. It's just this trail can be confusing sometimes. The other thing is you're never far from civilizations. You can see you go through all these little towns. There's Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, Ossining. Ossining, actually, they've reopened the aqueduct in 1987, and I believe it still supplies water there. So the old aqueduct has a section that's still in use. As you've probably seen, we go by these vents. These vents were about every mile, and basically they kept the water fresh, and so it had some airflow and all that kind of thing, so it wouldn't get gross. Yeah, you can just see here how, you go from complete nature and feeling like you're way out there into a town, and then into what feels like, people's driveways or alley. There's 26.2 mile section of the trail from the dam down, so basically to that Van Cortlandt Park, has been designated as the OCA State Historical Park. That was in 1968. And so almost the whole thing is rideable except for 4 sections. And it's kind of because where like a freeway will cross through or something, you might have to jump out on the road and kind of loop around a little bit. Another thing that you have to be, keeping your eyes out for if you're trying to follow the route. When you're on these stretches that are more in the towns, you get used to, not just looking at the map, but eyeing, like, where's the trail, And it's interesting because, it just doesn't feel super official, even though it is a park. Sometimes there's no curb cuts or there's people parked in front of it. You have to kind of go around and figure it out. It's just, I don't know. To me, that adds to what I think is really neat about it. I don't know. Some people, this is definitely gravel bike territory. So, I don't know, some people might not like that as much, but to me, that's one thing that makes it really, really cool. Also, riding at this time of year, you do need to be careful because it could be rough underneath those leaves. There could be rocky sections and stuff like that. Here you can tell we're on a smoother one, because we're more in like a, town area and a park area, but it's not always like that. It could be a little rough, so you do have to pay attention to the surface as you're riding it in a lot of spaces. So I think it was probably during the pandemic early on when I was watching some Terry Berenson videos, and he had ridden the OCA and was talking about it, and it just always stuck in my mind. And I'm like, when we could travel again, this is something I totally want to do. So when we did it a few years ago, I was already blown away by how much fun it is to ride. And so when we were going to be hitting New York City on this trip, I'm like, we got to do it again. And so I wanted to show it to Dylan so he could check it out. It's just such a cool route. And so we were going to ride all the way up to the dam and check it out, but we were camping not quite that far up. So we rode up to the dam because it's really beautiful as well, totally worth seeing if you never have. And then we were staying at Croton Point Park where we'd be camping, and the next day we would be riding into town, Croton on the Hudson, where we'd be picking up a truck and driving home. This is one of those sections where you need to do a little bit of a bypass. You can't stay on the trail. Not a big deal, though, at all. I left this clip here pretty long because it just gives you an idea what the vibe in certain parts are, where it is just really where you feel like you're just cutting through places like that dog, like kids outside playing, like it looks like you're in someone's yard, but this is where you're supposed to be going. There are also sections, though, that feel a little bit more traditional, more like a normal bike path where you're riding along for a while. It still does have the same thing I mentioned where you got to pay attention underneath the leaves this time of year. Here's that spot where you were going through a schoolyard. When we were riding this in the other direction the first time, it was recess, and we pulled up out front, and we're like, this can't be right, looking at our maps. Just so happened the custodian popped out the front door, and he was like, OCA? And we're like, yeah. He's like, yep, this is the way. So some little kid threw his kickball right at Brad, which was pretty funny, too. So... As you can see through here, a little bit more traditional, where you feel like you're on more of a bike path. But also still, there's a little bit of windy and up and down stuff, so you can see we're kind of flying through this section. One thing that I see a lot of New Yorkers do is just ride it in one direction. So where Croton Park is, there's also a big train station. So if you ride the OCA up, you could just hop on the train, right back to Grand Central in New York or wherever you may be going, or you could do it in the reverse direction as well. Last time we were in New York, when we were riding back up to Croton Park, we took the bike path, the official bike path the whole way, which is part of the Empire Trail. And Erin was tired from the trip, and she hopped on the train and met us up there. It's just one thing we don't get around here where I live. I was thinking the next day when we were driving home on Halloween, it was pretty funny that we rode right through Sleepy Hollow and all that the day before Halloween. It didn't even really cross my mind. I mean, obviously there's Halloween decorations everywhere, but that's one of the biggest Halloween tourism destinations anywhere. Obviously, the Headless Horseman, that's where it takes place. The town actually changed its name to Sleepy Hollow a number of years ago, I think in the 80s, to cash in on the tourism, but it actually is the town where the story took place. We stopped here for lunch. It was interesting. This town had a ton of Peruvian restaurants, so there must be a big immigrant population of people from Peru, I would guess. Yeah. Anyways, it was really, really good. I had some kind of seafood mix in the rice. I can't remember the official name of it, and a Peruvian beer. So got to sit outside on a day like today, October 30th. Just so awesome. So our ride for the day, starting in Queens, we were kind of on the Bushwick border, so not real deep in Queens, was 57 miles and about 2,300 feet of climbing. I think people, too, have the impression that New York City's completely flat, and it really isn't. So there was some climbing even in the city before we got out here. So our full route, starting at our Airbnb in Queens, which is kind of pretty close to Bushwick, so not deep in Queens, was 57 miles and about 2,300 feet of climbing for the day. This is a little section I hear people call the chute. It's really steep, it's really rough, and I've seen a lot of videos of friends that I know from New York City, everyone taking turns riding it. Even in Terry B's last video, a guy he ran into it tries to ride and goes down at the end. I walked the first little section and then rode it. With all the weight on the front of my bike with my panniers and not having a dropper, I was not confident. It is one of the things I've been saying. I think next spring I might put a dropper on the gunner. There's plenty of room for it. Getting up here closer to the dam, it is really park-like, really pretty. You can see these rocks, trees, everything, great views, just awesome. So here we are at the New Croton Dam. New Croton Dam, still a really old dam, but the views looking over, just absolutely amazing towards the reservoir in the other direction. So it's this really pretty stone dam, but then there's a bridge at the other end where the overflow channel or whatever is created like a waterfall and all the original more like stonework. Just, yeah, right here. Super, super cool. We hung out, taking pictures, just exploring, looking around. And then we crossed over and basically we had a little bit more climbing to do, and then it was basically a descent down into Croton on the Hudson. I wasn't really hungry yet, and we didn't really need any other supplies, so we kind of went right through town and headed over to our camp spot, this is the big train station, and there's a big maintenance facility here. So there's a bridge over the tracks, and then you're out on Croton Point Park, which is this cool peninsula that hangs out into the Hudson. I've seen a lot of people do trips out here now. I remember years ago, I was just searching around the map and saw this, and that was, like I said, one of those things. I'm like, in my mind, I'm going to camp here one day and ride this trail. Back in the day, these were vineyards off to the left, and I believe on the right here, these are some of the original 1830s buildings. And then this is the campground we're getting into, obviously the RV spot first. We were heading on to the tent camping site. The sunset, as we were getting set up for camp, everything went really pink. It was amazing. It was just one of those perfect sunsets, and it was just shining this color everywhere. But we decided instead of making camp meals, let's go into town and just get something else to eat. So we went and got some pizzas at a really cool restaurant. Dylan had some left over, so I used those infinity tools and strapped it to the rack and made it back with those guys. There are raccoons here, by the way, because Dylan woke up in the middle of the night and one was trying to get into his top tube bag. So beware of that. Which is why you got to sleep with your pizza. I got up a little earlier than he was up, and I took a little ride to the end of the point. I had never done that. When we camped here the first time, it was pretty rainy at night, and then we were hitting the road in the morning to get to New York. So really, really beautiful, just a little ride up here. And then there's cabins up here you could rent too. Those would be more, I think you need a little bit of a bigger group when I looked at the pricing on them. But it was interesting as I got to the point, they had all these signs where you're not allowed to go down. Not really sure why. I don't know if there's dangerous currents in the Hudson or something that they just want to keep people away, but that's exactly where you want to go. Whatever. I'm sure there's a rule for that for a reason. Yeah, so we made our camp coffee, made some breakfast, and then it was time to hit the road. The end of vacation, we were driving back to Akron in one shot. Then once I got back to Akron, Dylan had the drive all the way back to Columbus. I was so glad that the rental place actually had the truck we rented. You never know sometimes these days. You get there and, I don't know, it's the whole Seinfeld thing. The reservation keeps the car here. So we were lucky the truck was there. It was an Enterprise, and the guy who worked there was one of the nicest people I've ever dealt with in a service situation. It was awesome. So we had to pop off the front wheels to get everything loaded up right. Just, I don't know, these trucks now, they make them with these small impractical beds. It's really strange. So thanks to everyone who checked out this series, 5-6 videos. If you like this kind of content, consider becoming a channel member or buying some stickers or something like that. But at the least, just give this video a like. Thanks as always for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace.